Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It's time for our briefing today, and so I want to jump right in. I want to sum up what I would like to talk to you about today with my title. It's very simple. Try to keep it very succinct. Here it is: Do not normalize behavior. Look for the principle. Okay, I believe it's 8 words. Do not normalize behavior. Look for the principle. All right, let me unpack that. A few days ago, matter of fact, I'm doing this on Tuesday, June the 15th. So actually a week ago today, I was kind of talking about this at a ministers conference. I was privileged to speak at my old alma mater, my last church that I pastored, Pastor Lynn Hart and his amazing staff and the wonderful people there at Fort Mill Church of God. They sponsored a pastor's retreat. And Pastor Mark invited me to come and be a part of that. And so I was greatly honored. And it was a wonderful 2 days to spend, actually 3 days to spend there. I was able to speak on Sunday as well. And so anyway, Pastor Loran Livingston over at Central and myself were the 2 invited guests to come and join with Pastor Mark and his staff as we participated in the ministers conference. And I was thinking about it as I was listening to Pastor Livingston, who has had great success in life as a minister and someone that I highly respect. And I was thinking about he and I both, I feel like we both gave some good material, and we should, by the grace of God. We've had a measure of success, and we give God all the glory. God and being star pupils from the School of Hard Knocks, we had some good material. So we spoke with passion, and the good news is that I feel like we gave good material. But as I began to reflect on my presentation and on what Pastor Livingston and I had taught, and really Pastor Linhart, Pastor Mark is a very successful pastor and has a number of years experience as well. And so as we were teaching, I realized there was like an alarm bell went off in my mind, and I've seen this happen so many times. And the good news is that we had some good and practical advice that could really help the ministers. The bad news is that if they were not careful, the listeners could latch onto our behavior and miss the principles being taught. Or let me put it another way. The listeners could maybe look at the measure of success that we had and latch onto what we did. Well, if they did that, it must work. And they could latch onto what we did and forget to learn why we did it. And so I was thinking, how can I kind of debrief in that I had a last general session with the people that were there, and I just kind of debriefed with them. And really, I woke up early in the morning, last Tuesday morning, I woke up with this on my mind, and this thought came to me: do not normalize behavior, look for the principle. Now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. One of the sessions I did, especially with the senior pastors, I gave them, and I literally copied. I have a template that one of the first things I do every morning is I have a template. I call it my game plan, and there's some tweaking of it, but there's a general template that I go by my day. I organize my day by, and in 11 size font. It's 2 pages, a front and back. I filled up the pages. I talked to them, and I just gave them, line by line, and just kind of walked them through what a typical day looks like for me. Now, that at first glance, if you looked at that, it would be overwhelmingly complicated if you didn't understand the method behind it. And so I had to explain to them that my game plan is a result of 43 years of painful personal experience. And I don't want to reteach that lesson, but when I started as a young man, as a pastor, theoretically you have a boss, but practically you don't really have a boss that's there every day. You're not punching in and clocking out. Your members aren't calling you, Pastor. Did you get up this morning? Have you prayed? Have you studied? Are you taking care of visitation? Are you taking care of administration? there was nobody. I remember even at Fort Mill when I went there years ago as the youth pastor, I walked by my old office, which is a closet. It was a closet then too. It was a big closet. And so I had one of these 8-foot, 6-foot or 8-foot tables. I forget how long they are. That just your typical tables that you have in the fellowship hall. And I had a metal chair, one of those metal chairs. And I remember sitting at my desk and I didn't know what to do. I had no clue of really what I needed to do, how to do life and ministry. And so that started me on a journey. Long story short, I have a complicated, I guess to others, but I have a detailed system. I have a detailed game plan that keeps me on track. But as I began to think about it, and the reason why I shared it with them, I've often wondered to myself, what do people that I admire, people that I want to learn from, that I would like to be like, or that I would like to be at the level of life and ministry that they're at, I wonder what their day looks like. How do they do that? How do they make decisions? And so anyway, I was giving them a benchmark of what I did so that they could measure. My goal was not to get them to do what I do, but the goal was to learn principles. But as I began to think about it, it's so easy to, I'm just going to start doing what David does. And that would be the worst thing they could do, because my game plan, my daily plan is around my weaknesses and the lessons I learned. It's around trying to keep me in line. And you may not have the same weaknesses. You may not have the same priorities. My game plan today is a reflection on my current assignment, which is, of course, the privilege of being the administrative bishop here in the great North Central region. And even though this is ministry, I have learned when I went into administration that it's a world of difference between doing administrative bishop and doing pastor. It's apples and oranges. And so my game plan has changed to some degree. And so the goal was not to get them to mimic me, ape me, as some people say. It was not to say this is how you do it, but this is what I do and why. In other words, do not normalize my behavior. Look for the principles. Extrapolate, pull from my behavior timeless principles that you can plug into your life. And so there were two principles that I was trying to teach them that day. Principle number one, if you do not have a plan for your life, someone else will, and you will probably not like it. So I was trying to teach them, have a plan. Get up every day and have a plan. Don't just wait for the phone to ring. Don't wait for others to set your itinerary for the day. Everybody's fighting for your time, but nobody's fighting for you. And so people will use you up, and not in a mean-spirited way, but they'll work you to death. They'll have you focused on what they want done, and you will be off mission. And so the first thing I was teaching is have a plan for your life. Be proactive. And the second principle I was teaching was that your life, to experience success, I have learned that you will have to manage ever-increasing complexity without compromising your core responsibilities. Now let me run that by you again. Very important principle. This is the lid that stops a lot of people. To continue to succeed in life, you will have to manage ever-increasing complexities without compromising your core responsibilities. Like as a pastor, you'll grow to a certain level. A part of what you've got to do, we'll just take one thing, is every Sunday, it's obvious that everybody thinks of, but every Sunday you do need to have a quality word from the Lord. Like Leonard Albert said, a snappy, I forget the word he used, so I'll use snappy, but a snappy PowerPoint never compensates for a lousy sermon. And so I read that, my quotes just recently. It's so true. You can have a great PowerPoint and all the lights and all the flash and dash, but if you haven't taken the time, if you haven't been organized and structured to study and really have a good word from God and prepare your heart, then the power is not going to be there. And so have a plan for your life to take care of your core competencies or your core responsibilities. But then you keep preaching, people start coming. And so then you have new visitors come. You got to figure out what, without compromising my study time, my devotional time with God. But now I got to figure out how to accommodate these new people. So you hire a staff. A staff person doesn't make your job easier. It makes it harder. Now you got not only to manage yourself, but to manage them. Not only to fund what God has dropped in your heart, but now you got to fund their ministry, and on it goes. And so at every level of success, more complexities, more responsibilities. And so if you can't handle that, eventually there'll be a lid. And so what you do is you develop systems so that you don't have to remember and keep up with everything. You make promises and you make commitments, and all this stuff gets to bouncing around in your head like a bunch of ping pong balls, and you'll drop some of them, you'll forget some of them, and then you begin to undermine your ministry. So those were the principles I was teaching in that lesson. Not what I do, not my method, not my personal behavior. It'll look different for you. It will look different. It would look different for those listeners. But those were the principles. And that's what, in every area of life, don't normalize behavior. Oh, what they're doing, okay, that must be normal. That's what successful, whatever, if it's a dog catcher or candlestick maker or a baker, whatever, or a preacher. Okay, so that's what's normal. No, don't normalize their behavior. Look for the principle. Don't look for the what, look for the why. And so that's kind of the burden of my heart. I see so many guys and gals, we're looking to be like somebody. No, the best person you can be like is yourself. That's how God made you. But you can learn from others the principles of how to do life and then apply them into your life. So what to do? Okay, just using my title. First of all, do not normalize other people's behavior. Do not allow what other people do to dictate to you that also that's normal and I must be abnormal. No, that's different from what you are. They're different from you. And we have a tendency, I'd never heard of this till all this COVID stuff came out, but they call it herd immunity. Maybe to it. Jesus knew what he was talking about when he compared us to sheep. We humans have a tendency to herd together. With one does it, we all want to do it. But you're a leader. You're different. You must not allow yourself to become a part of the herd. And so do not normalize other people's behavior. Now, let me give you a couple of examples from my life. When I was a little boy, somewhere, it was fashionable. There was a time that it was fashionable that the women would twirl their hair up and it would go up. We call it a beehive hairdo. Somehow in my world, my church world, that became the norm. That became, not only did it become what is normal, but that's what became godly. That was holy women of God wore their hair up on top of their head. And so that became normal, the beehive hairdo. I remember going to the church, and especially at camp meeting, man, everybody dreaded a holiness woman sitting in front of them, because then you had to look around, you try to see the preacher, see the platform. And so everybody, all the women wore their hair that way. All the men dressed in a certain way. I remember my dad, it was some kind of white cream in a bottle, and he put it in his hair. They kind of slicked their hair back, and they all dressed. All the men wore a suit and they wore a tie. The ministers did. They took it so serious that ministers would literally cut their grass in a suit. They were literally I remember at one church I pastored, they talked about their pastor that he would wear his suit and change his oil, be up under the car with a suit and tie on. And that became the norm. They normalized behavior. Of course, now we've gone to the other extreme. You got, instead of having your hair slicked down, your hair's spiked up, and the women wear their hair different now, and we just dress entirely different. We're going all the way to the other extreme. And so we've normalized another kind of behavior. It's so predictable. You go to churches now, it's so predictable, just like it was 50, 60 years ago. It's kind of, I just kind of chuckle. People think they're being different, and we've normalized behavior, and we're all the same. Now the principle is that curb appeal matters. The way you present yourself matters. There is a certain way that you should present yourself to look godly. It does, to be modest, to look professional. And so the principle there, not the behavior, is what we should have been focusing on. Let me give you one more, just real quick. Some people call it the worship wars. And there was a certain style of worship when I was growing up, and this was the way it was done. And then I remember along the way, they started coming out with courses. And they were so neat, and they were easier, and you learn them, and they're kind of more in the contemporary sound of that time. And I remember just recently I was at a church, and we were singing one of those courses that I grew up with, new courses back then, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And it was called a hymn. And I remember when that hymn was a cutting edge, it meant this was different. And so what everybody did, they started piling on. That became the new normal. We threw the hymn books away. I don't know if you've even heard of convention books, but there used to be convention books. That became old hat, and we threw them away. We stopped having choirs, and we started singing, and everybody sang. And it was kind of a thing of pride. Real churches, you stood at least 30 minutes, and some would stand 45 minutes to an hour singing, and worship became, we had the praise dancers and banners and on it goes. And so worship became the cat's meow, and there was a certain way you had to do it. And what happened? After a while, everybody started doing it the same way. It became normal. It no longer, and then what happened? It became a matter of who could do normal the best. It wasn't anything special unless you could do normal, extraordinarily good. And so then we began to have, it became more of a show, more of a production. And the very principle that we should have learned, and that is that worship is important, and it does deserve our best. But not the method, not the what, it was the why that we forgot. And so I want to encourage you, do not normalize other people, other churches. Don't normalize their behavior. That's not, God didn't call you to be like other people or to be someone else. He called you to be you, which leads me to the second thing to do. Look for principles that will help you improve and be more effective. You know, a lot of times we're like what James said in James chapter 1. He said, "But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourself. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was." And think about it. How many conferences have we gone to? Oh, that was good. We got inspired. And then we went home, took the manual. We may even have taken notes. And we took the manual, we put it on a shelf. We left it up there for 5 or 6 years till the shelf got full and we had more conferences to go through. So we chucked a few of them or gave them to somebody, and we never opened them again. And we never learned. We never took the time to learn those principles, to extrapolate, to pull from the inspiring, great leaders that we listen to say, now, what they said and what they're doing is really impressive, but why? How can I make that something that I can do in my own life? Where's the principle? It was Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living. So make time in your week for intense study and reflection on what you have read and listened to, and review it regularly. Go back and review. Just the other day, I was looking at at a series of questions, a whole long series of questions that I had taken to Dr. Paul Walker many years ago. Back when Fort Mill had reached a certain level and I was overwhelmed and I couldn't work harder. I couldn't do more. I only have so much strength. I only have so many minutes in a day. I couldn't do more. I couldn't work harder. So I knew that something was wrong and I had to have help. And I had this long document of page after page. And I took those answers and I put it into a Word document. And I have a bunch of others of conferences and lessons and things that I've heard over the years. And I go through them a little bit every day in my morning devotion. And I've refreshed my memory of principles that have changed my life. And remember, you're always just one idea away from the next level. So make time not to normalize behavior, but to learn principles and then relearn them, reflect on them, and figure out how they can help you in your life and in your ministry. Now, let me close with this. The benefits of focusing on principles versus behavior. Okay, the benefit is living a principle-based life protects you from the ever-changing tides of human opinions, styles, and fads. Let me run that by you again. Living a principle-based life protects you from the ever-changing tides of human opinions, styles, and fads. You know what? So many of our ministers, maybe you, so many people in life, they are competing against the guy down across town, the latest, the newest, the best, and maybe they've got a big underwriter, they got more money, they got more talent, and everybody's flocking there. And so we all jump on board. Whatever they're doing, we need to do it. And so we jump on the next fad, the next new thing. This is what everybody thinks is the greatest and the latest. And so never mind that our skill set does not match that our assignment does not match that the people we're trying to serve does not match that. And so we jump on. Ken Blanchard and Phil Hodges, in their book, Lead Like Jesus, they said this, and it was written to the business community, but it's applicable to us in the ministry. It says, the only thing your competition can't duplicate is the relationship your people have with your customers. Okay? The only thing your competition can't duplicate is the relationship your people have with your customers. It's like the difference at a bank. You can go to 8 different banks and all the tellers will give out the same U.S. currency. The only difference is the way that teller treats you. And the one thing that you have, that the latest and the greatest and the best and the name that everybody knows, the one thing that you have that they don't have is you. And when you stay focused on how can I be the best me, what I can learn from the giants. I can learn from the greatest and the latest and the best. Nothing wrong. I'm going to have a measure of humility. I can learn from everybody. But I want to learn principles. I don't want to ape their behavior. I don't want to be another one of them. I want to be uniquely me. And when you do that, it sets you free and protects you. Because what happens is we all become the same. The new guy comes along and he's got a new idea, and then everybody jumps on board, normalizes that behavior, and then it just becomes a rat race to who can become the best at the new norm. And there's only 1 or 2 winners. And that's not what God's called us to be. He's called us to be ourselves. So learn principles. Don't fall into the trap of, I've got to be like them. I've got to normalize their behavior into my own life. Okay, so now that's normal. No, what's normal is for you to be you. And then the second benefit of 2 is living a principle-based life helps you to make decisions and take actions based on your values and eternal truths, not emotions. Everybody gets all this latest, greatest, or maybe you're in the heat of a battle and emotions are high, And as a leader, you studied, you know what your values are, you know why you exist, your core values, that I exist. And for instance, it took me years to figure this out. But I personally, this is the reason why I exist. I exist to know, love, and obey Jesus Christ. Now, I know, okay, well, sure, we all do. No, but I exist to know the more I know him, the more I love him, the more I love him, the more I obey him. John 14:15, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. How can I love someone unless I know them? So it directs my whole life. It directs my whole life. And from that, everything else, Paul said, I count all these other things lost. Throw them away, that I may know Jesus in the fellowship of his suffering. And so, you know your values, you know why you exist. And so when the chips are down, who do I need to be like? No, that's not the question. What do I need to do? And Jesus put it up this way, said it this way. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, not whoever watches me and does what I do. You know, if we did that, we'd go around with a robe on, telling parables, I guess, and casting out devils and taking happy meals and feeding homeless people. We can't do what Jesus did. We'll do greater things, but we can't do what Jesus did. We're not, there's only one of him. He's the God-man, the incredible miracle. But we can be me, we can be us. I can be me, you can be you. And we don't have to make emotional decisions, but we can look for the principles, and it keeps us steady in the midst of the storms of life. And so, guys and gals, learn by all means, but don't normalize anyone's behavior. Go for the principles, learn principles, so that you can live a principle-based life. It's far better than trying to jump on board with the latest and the greatest. All right, there you go. Enough for today. I hope you're doing well. Looking forward to camp meeting next week. Those of you in the great North Central region here, we'll be at Minot at Eagles Wings with Pastor Travis Hovde and his amazing team there. It's going to be a great week next week, and you know the drill. You know who's we've been promoting it, and so if you have questions, of course, call the office and call me, and we'll be glad to serve you in any way. But love you all. Wish you the best, and we'll see you soon. Let's keep running to win. Amen.